Wisecrack is released weekly and brought to you absolutely free. But if you want to hear the whole season right now, it's available ad-free on Tenderfoot Plus. For more information, check out the show notes. Enjoy the episode.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the podcast author or individuals participating in the podcast and do not represent those of iHeartRadio, Tenderfoot TV, or their employees. This podcast also contains subject matter which may not be suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
Previously on Wisecrack.
I'm going to tell you a story, right? And it's going to be one story all the way through. Everything I'm going to tell you is completely true, apart from three things. There are three lies in this story. So, on 22nd of July 2015, about 10:30, I leave the gig. I go to my parents' house, wake up about 20 minutes after I fell asleep, and at the end of my bed there is someone standing. It's my mum. She's scared. She's really scared. She says the words to me, "Whatever you do, do not turn on the lights." Whoever's in the front garden, whatever's in the front garden. At this stage, I don't know how many people, how many things, what it could be, but my dad is looking at it, and he won't go downstairs. It doesn't make sense. So I think, right, I'm going to call the police. I'll find out what's going on. I call the police, it rings a couple of times, someone answers. I said, "Hey, my name's Ed, I'm calling from 40 Bentfield Avenue. Someone's banging on our front door, I think it's a drunk, but my parents are acting really weird, and it's kind of shaking me up. Could you send an officer down just to check this out?" And the person on the other end of the phone says, "I'm sorry, where did you say you were calling from?" I said, 40 Bentfield Avenue, just in Saffron Walden. And the officer says, "Mr. Hedges, we are very aware of the situation. Please barricade yourself inside the house and do not engage with anyone you meet." And then they hang up. I'm like, rude? Fuck.
That first night in Edinburgh, my head was spinning. And I wasn't alone. Edd Hedges started his set like any other stand-up comedian, but suddenly, we were all side-eyeing each other in the audience. Should we laugh or brace ourselves?
I walk into the hallway, back with my parents, and I said, "Guys, I've just called the police and they're acting kind of odd," and my mum does this. I go quiet, and I listen, and the banging has stopped. And it's been replaced by the sound of footsteps going down the front of our house, and then the sound of an old iron gate getting pushed open. I know the iron gate because that's the iron gate I used to use when I come back from the pub drunk with the cricket team. I push the iron gate open, I'd walk down the side of my house into the back garden, and I would go into the back door, because the back door is always unlocked. Back door's always unlocked. And we can hear them through the windows. They go down the side of the house into the back garden. They walk up to the back door, they put their hand on the door handle, and they pull it down. And it doesn't go. And the second it made that chonk noise, my dad to my mum went, "That is why I did that, by the way."
I'm Jodi and this is Wisecrack. Episode 2. Who's there?
There was an incident of this when I was a kid. My dad took me to the fair. I'd never been before because I didn't really have any friends, and he took me, my mum and him to the local fair. They're not like your fairs. I've seen at your fairs you fry everything and you throw people in the air. We don't do that. We like to have fun. And my dad was driving us to the fair. I was so excited. And then we pulled over in front of my aunt's house, and my cousin Jasper walked out, and I was livid because I hate Jasper. We all hate Jasper. I need you to be on board with me. We hate Jasper, right? He's such a weird kid. He was the kind of kid that would sit on the bottom deck of a double-decker, right? Live a little twat. He's so weird. I can't explain it. He got into the car and he was wearing a 3-piece suit to go to the fair. Oh, I hate him so much, it makes me stronger. We went to the fair. I'm only a couple of years older than Jasper at this point. I'm like 10, he's like 8. And we're looking for something to go on, and my dad's getting more and more annoyed. He's like, I've taken a day off work. I've brought these kids to the fair, not going on anything. What is the point in this? I've had a day off work. I'm losing a day's money. What is going on here? And after a little while, he kind of erupted. He was like, kids, get on a ride now. We're going right home. And Jasper was like, we'll go on the Dodgems. And you don't know what the Dodgems are. You call them bumper cars, right? Yeah, cool, because you like to bump into them, but we like to dodge them. We're so similar, guys. We should just stop fighting, you silly gooses. Oh, we call them dodgems. I got on. I sat down in the bumper car. I was actually quite excited. Jasper sat next to me. He wasn't allowed to drive because he was wearing a suit. And the second I sit down, I see in front of me is Ryan Goddard.
Ryan Goddard is Ed's childhood bully who relentlessly tormented him all throughout grade school.
Now, at this point, Ryan Goddard has been bullying me for about 4 years. I'm terrified of him. He's already, good at sport. I am shitting my pants. I'm so scared. He sees me and starts heading straight for me and Jasper. And I didn't know what to do, so I realized I had 2 options. Either I bend down, I press the pedal, and I steer around Ryan, or I hit him straight on. I know what my dad would prefer. My dad would prefer me to hit him straight on, to do the manly thing, to be a man, to tackle the problem head on. But I wanted to go around him. I just didn't want to have the conflict, and it was an internal struggle for me. I was tossing up between hitting him and going around him. Option A, option B, option A, option B. In the end, I went for option C, which was undo my belt and leave the vehicle. There is not a reality that exists where I can describe how hard Jasper got hit by that car. And on that day, Jasper lost all of his front teeth. He also broke his nose. My dad grabs Jasper, he pulls him out of the car, he turns to me and he goes, "You're a coward." And he said, "Get in the car." And I went, "Right, cool." We got in the car. He was angry. He was angrier than he's been for a long time. I could feel the heat coming off the back of his neck. Do you know that kind of anger where people are radiating energy? I sit in the car. Jasper's next to me. His suit is now red. Mum sits in the passenger seat. Dad sits in the driver's seat. I'm sitting behind Dad. We start driving. We're driving at about 80 miles an hour. Dad's angry. And he was mumbling under his breath. And I could hear what he was mumbling, but he was like, "Why can't he just be normal? Why can't he just be like the other kids?" And my mum said, "John, stop it." And he said, "Why can't he be like any of the other kids? Tony's boy was there. Ian, he was playing sports. Jackie's daughter was there. She was going on the slide. Susan's daughter was there. Ryan." It was like he was there. They were all there. All the normal kids were there. And I've got this one. I was like, shit.
When you see his set live, you quickly realize Edd is actually performing 3 shows at once. The first show is Edd's endearing comedy, side-splitting stories about growing up chubby, dyslexic, asthmatic, and just kind of strange in a small town outside of London. The second plot is Edd's retelling of this terrifying night when he returned to his childhood village for the first time as an adult, years after leaving to pursue his dreams of stand-up comedy. After Edd finished his show, he had a few pints with old friends, walked back to his childhood home, and passed out in his small bedroom until he was awoken by his parents and the violent knocking of an intruder trying to get into the front door.
And then we hear them walk back up the pathway into the front garden, and it goes quiet.
But there is a third show going on when he's on stage. It's what Edd is not telling you. He's already warned us that there are 3 lies built into the show, and at this point in the set, he's only divulged 1. But you can sense there's something yet to be revealed.
And my mum turns to my dad and she says, "I think they've gone." And as she starts to say, like, the G in gone, the sound of someone drop kicking our front door comes. First kick smashes the glass, second kick, the wood starts to break. My mum grabs me and my dad and pushes us into the toilet. She shuts the door behind us, she locks it, she's fully crying at this point. She turns around to me, she says, "Edward, promise me you won't leave. Promise me you'll stay here. This is the only room that has a lock and running water. We'll be safe if we just stay in here." The sound is getting louder, the wood is breaking. We can hear it. Whoever's outside is breaking down the door. We can hear it falling to pieces. My mum is crying. I am panicking. My dad is sitting on the floor. And then I realise it. I look at my dad and I realise it. Why I couldn't get a grasp on what he was doing. He was scared. How fucked is that? I was like 23 years old and I just realised that my dad was scared. First time in my life. He was this unit of a man. I'd never seen him scared before. He is terrified. He can't control the situation. He's lost control completely. He is so scared. And this wall of a man, this thing that used to terrify me, covered in eggshells, I had to step around, for the first time in my life, showed a bit of weakness. And I can't think of what's outside because I'm just looking at him thinking, "You're fucking human, man." The noise is getting more and more, and Mum's having a full panic attack. She has a condition called angina. Her heart is going too quickly. And just before the door gets broken in, we hear a helicopter. And then we see the lights of police cars pulling onto our street. The banging stops. It goes quiet again in the village. And then a polite knock comes from the front door. That's the creepiest thing. All this banging and then just a polite knock. Courtesy freaked me out. We didn't answer it, and then Mum gets a phone call. She stands up, she unlocks the door, she goes downstairs. My dad stands up, he follows her, I stand up, and I walk into the bedroom. I tell my parents it's because I'm tired and I can't be asked. In actual fact, I'm having a full panic attack for the first time in my life. I go and lay down in my bed, I shut my eyes and I start to count, just to try and make myself go to sleep. And then I wake up. It's a beautiful day. Sun's out, birds are chirping. I'm happier than I've ever been. Because I realise, it's all just a dream. And then I hear my mum crying downstairs, and I think, fuck, that's not. So I get up, I walk downstairs. The blinds are down, all the doors are shut, I can't see anything at all, I can't see the front door. The TV is off, Mum and Dad are on the sofa, Mum's crying, and on the coffee table there are pancakes. As I start eating the pancakes, and I turn to my dad, I said, "What was all that last night then?" And he didn't answer me. He just picked up the TV remote and turned on Sky News. And on Sky News is my house. My house is covered in police tape, and on the street there are a few police officers. And that's how I learned about what happened on the night of the 22nd of July 2015. Between 11 and 12 o'clock at night. A 23-year-old man named Ryan Goddard, my school bully, had killed his family. He stabbed his mother 42 times, his stepfather 56, using 7 different blunt knives from the kitchen, and they identified him by the shape of his shoe print left on the side of his mother's skull. And then he came to my house. Things didn't go Ryan's way after I left the village. He broke his hip and he couldn't play football anymore. He was playing for a semi-professional team and he had to move home with his family. Became a milkman, had to knock on people's doors every day. This sort of local celebrity is now a milkman, and I knew Susan. She was good. Susan, his mum, was a good person. And I didn't know what to say. sort of sat there, when something so bad you can't look left or right, and you're just soaking it in. And I wanted to make it better. I wanted to sort of fix it, and I couldn't. I couldn't fix it. But my dad, John, the hero of the house, man, he saved the day, as he always does. He put his hand on my shoulder, he put his hand around my mum, and he said, "It's fine. We're okay. We've got each other still. We're alive. We're safe, thanks to the Titan 17 windows." Now, his second lie of the show, he did not say that. And while I'm at it, I'll tell you the third lie. The third lie, just so you're aware, is that I've changed the names and the places and the people's names just out of respect for the dead. I thought it was the right thing to do. We all sort of processed it in different ways. It was really interesting to see. So my mum was really healthy. She talked to people, and she sought a support network. My dad buried himself in his work, and I immediately started gigging again. I buried myself in my work, and then I realised I was doing what my dad was doing, so I did this. They just kind of pretended it never happened. It was, I don't know if you've seen Hot Fuzz, but it was genuinely, it was like that. They were like, "Don't talk about it, don't report it, lock this shit down." And then you'd walk up to me and be like, "Did you hear about the murders?" And they'd be like, "Lovely day we're having." All right. One thing I do know is I am eternally grateful to you all for coming tonight. My name is Edd Hedges. Thank you very much for listening to my story.
And just like that, it was over. Ed got a standing ovation, but he didn't stick around for the applause. His face lost all expression as he left stage, like he had somewhere to be. It was the strangest mic drop I'd ever seen. The audience quickly gathered their belongings and slipped back into the rain, casually chatting about what they'd just seen, but I stayed seated, stunned. Had I really just heard a true story of a double homicide wrapped in a comedy set, told by a comedian who was almost the third victim? Or did he make the whole thing up? I had to know. I ran out to the stage door to introduce myself, but Edd Hedges had long left the venue. The stage manager advised me to return the next day to catch him before his performance, but I didn't want to wait that long. I grabbed a coffee and scoured my phone for any trace of Edd Hedges. Most budding comedians have big social media presences, but not Ed. He had a single Twitter account, and his last post was weeks old. I DM'd him anyway, but nothing back. When I Googled him, I found a lot of promos and press releases, but nothing about his hometown. When he was only 20, Ed won the So You Think You're Funny contest, a British comedy competition. He had a few runs at the Soho Theatre in London to great reviews, but his career had slumped since then. I searched for the village he mentions.
You wouldn't have heard of it. It's called Saffron Walden.
It's a real town, but no double homicide. And more curious, Ed never specifically says where he's from in interviews, like he's going out of his way to keep his past unclear.
You're not going to be able to Google this one. I've hidden it well enough that you won't be able to find anything.
Despite trying for hours, I couldn't find anything. So the next day, I went back to his show. And this time I recorded it on my iPhone 7. Apologies for the sound quality, but this is the first time I ever captured Ed's performance.
I'm not one of those red-blooded kind of male comics that's going to be like, "Hey, wasn't your drink? Come." I'm not that character.
The show was almost identical to the night before. Some names changed, but every sharp line written and performed with an intentional vagueness.
That night, a 23-year-old male named Christian Goddard had killed his family.
And this time, I darted to the stage door when Ed's set came down. In fact, I think I scared him a little. I stuck out my hand, told him I was a television producer specializing in true crime, and I would like to talk to him about his show. Immediately, Ed became dismissive. eyes down, shuffling his feet. Looking for an excuse to leave the conversation, Edd said he needed to prepare for his next set. But perhaps intrigued by something I said, we exchanged numbers and planned to meet for a drink after his last show. As he reached for the stage door, I lobbed one last question. "Hey, can you at least tell me the name of your bully?" He glanced around to see if anyone was listening, looked back at me, and quietly said, "Brett Rogers." That simple name unlocked everything for me.
They found the lifeless body of Gillian Phillips, 54, slumped on the sofa and covered in her own congealed blood.
He also repeatedly stabbed and caused a fatal head injury to David Oakes, who had stayed with her overnight.
Inquests into the death of a woman and a man in Stansted Mount Fitchett have been opened and adjourned.
With the name Brett Rogers, I could almost confirm everything that happened that terrible night. Not in Saffron Morgan, but in a small town called Stansted Mount Fitchett, 35 miles northeast of London. Even more fascinating, everything that Edd said on stage about the murders themselves was true. Verifiable, right down to the amount of stab wounds found on Brett's mother's body.
Mrs. Phillips suffered at least 41 stab wounds to the head, neck and torso, plus 14 blunt force injuries and defensive wounds. She was pronounced dead at the scene.
The number of articles published in the wake of the murders were in the dozens, but they all reported the same scant, superficial facts. Since Edd had moved away from Stansted, Brett's life had fallen apart. With few job opportunities, Brett took a job as the local milkman, delivering fresh dairy to lifelong neighbors who were all aware of his downfall. He was constantly in trouble with the law, everything from drug use to violent fights, and eventually landed himself in prison for 3 years. When he was released, he had nowhere to live except his mother's house, his childhood home, the one 3 doors down from Edd. Then came the night of July 22, 2015. The terror started at 9 p.m. Both Brett's mom, Gillian Phillips, and her friend, David Oakes, had been heavily drinking. There was no way either could have fought off the attack. Their thinned blood would account for the red-soaked couch and floor, where Gillian and David were found respectively. Both their heads were bruised and fractured, consistent with violent blunt force trauma. Once they were incapacitated, Brett repeatedly stomped on their faces, leaving a bloody footprint from his Nike Air trainer on his mother's cheek. A forensic scientist later confirmed that the butchery Brett committed that night would have taken him at least 1 hour or longer. At 11 p.m., Brett Rogers left his house and wandered onto the common green, a small shared outdoor yard with benches. There, Brett called 999. For some reason, either the call was dropped or he hung up, Brett did not speak to an officer. Inexplicably, Brett returned to his house. While the victims bled out downstairs, Brett climbed upstairs, tracking blood on the treads. He changed out of the blood-soaked size 8 Nike trainers and into size 9 shoes. Approximately 30 to 45 minutes later, Brett calls 999 again, this time requesting help. Around midnight, a lone officer arrived to find Brett in a side alley beside Edd's house. He was clutching a white plastic bag, his arms and hands were slick with blood, and he was grinning, laughing. To top it all off, on the way to the station after his arrest, Brett turned to the officer and asked if they could swing by McDonald's first. But the crime scene had yet to reveal 2 of the most baffling parts of the murders. The following day, during a methodical search of Gillian's overflowing kitchen trash can, the murder weapons were discovered. Inside, 7 knives were found, 4 black ones, 1 red, 1 yellow, and 1 blue, indicating that Brett went back and forth over the course of an hour or so, randomly choosing a new instrument every time a knife broke or dulled. Some of the knives were missing handles due to the violent force used to thrust the blades into the victims' bodies. Investigators also found Brett's discarded Nikes, his gray sweatpants, several towels and a pillowcase, all soaked in blood. He'd also thrown away cash, 220 pounds in 20-pound notes, and a pair of women's animal print underwear. But perhaps the strangest discovery lay outside in another trash bin, evidence of a different side to Brett's breakdown. Sometime during the murders, he had scrawled a message, a letter of sorts, 3 words written over and over at least 30 times. I, and love, and much. Then he destroyed the message, tearing it into 300 small pieces. I kept poring over the articles because one question kept nagging at me. Why? What sent Brett over the edge that night? I couldn't wait to ask Edd, but it turns out I'd have to. Edd stood me up. I waited in that pub for 2 hours. I sent him a message on WhatsApp, nothing. Not even a courtesy text saying I can't make it. I crawled in bed that night bummed, and frankly, a little pissed. Young comedians come to the Fringe Fest for one reason, to show their talent to the world, to find new collaborators and expand their audiences. I thought Edd and I might make a great team. Why would he not show? Maybe he's already working with someone else, or isn't interested in a wider audience. Or maybe he's decided that I'm not the perfect fit for his ambitions. After all, I'm a crime producer and he's a stand-up. And that's when it hit me. Despite what Edd said on stage, a double murder in a small town, the killer coming to his house, all on the one night in 4 years that Edd happened to be back home.
He had no idea that I was there. This was just a coincidence.
A coincidence? That's certainly possible, but probable? Or maybe Edd was trying to convince himself of that narrative.
That's my story. Thank you so much.
Whatever the truth was, Edd was going through it. For his audiences, cackling through his 45-minute set, this was just another comedy routine. For Edd, it was trauma therapy with dozens of people looking on. The next night, I waited at the stage door, again, and this time, I didn't hold back. I told Edd why I thought he was avoiding me. I told him why I think he changes all the names and places in the story. And then, I told him why I think he performs this set in the first place. He, too, wants to know why Brett did what he did, and if his presence in town that night had anything to do with his bully's meltdown. Edd was speechless. And then he unloaded his thoughts on me, telling me that Brett never mentioned him by name after he left, that he already had mental problems, and that Brett would have never known that Edd was in town for one night only. Rather than push back, I simply asked Edd a question. I asked if he would like to explore everything that led up to those murders in hopes of unearthing Brett's motivations that night. That maybe a deeper understanding of Brett might unshackle him from any of his darker feelings. He got very quiet, shook his head, and told me he would think about it. And that was the last time I talked to Edd Hedges. Until 2 years later, when he called me piss-drunk. He told me he'd been considering my offer for years. It had always stuck in the back of his mind. He said if I was still up for it, he was in. Why now, I thought. What's changed? Then he said, one thing though. Brett's dead. Next time on Wisecrack.
In most cases, they swing their fists around. Yes, plausible, it's believable, you've had a fight. But you don't kill your mum.
The forensic scientists took a huge number of photographs, not all of which we showed to the jury. Some of them were just too horrific to do so. The thing that struck me most about it was the sheer quantity of bloodshed. It literally was a bloodbath.
Wisecrack is a production of Tenderfoot TV and iHeart Podcasts in association with Starwipe Productions. I'm your host, Jodi Tovey. The show is written by Charles Forbes. Stand-up comedy written and performed by Edd Hedges with additional writing contributions by Charles Forbes. Executive producers for Tenderfoot TV are Donald Albright and Payne Lindsay. Executive producers for Starwipe Productions are Jodi Tovey and Charles Forbes. Lead producer is Alex Vespestad, with additional production by Stephen Perez, Joe Grizzle, Jaja Muhammad, Jamie Albright, and Jordan Foxworthy. Lead editor is Stephen Perez, with additional editing by Dylan Harrington and Liam Luxon. Coordinating producers are John Street and Tracy Kaplan. Research by Jim Nally and Misty Showalter. Original music by Jay Ragsdale, with additional music by Makeup and Vanity Set. Mix by Cooper Skinner. Artwork by Byron McCoy. Special thanks to Oren Rosenbaum and the team at UTA, Nate Ranson, Alexander Kaplan and the Synergy Clubhouse, and the Nord Group. For more podcasts like Wisecrack, search Tenderfoot TV on your favorite podcast app or visit us at tenderfoot.tv. Thanks for listening. Episode 3 will release next week, but you can binge the rest of the season right now, completely ad-free by subscribing to Tenderfoot Plus on Apple Podcasts or at tenderfootplus.com.